What's going on, guys? Welcome to our first episode of Buffalo Talk Center. Here with me is Jaden. In this podcast, we're going to talk all things Buffalo sports, Buffalo Sabres, Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Bandits. We're also going to touch on the New York Knicks and New York Mets because me and Jaden are both fans of both of those teams. And lastly, we'll talk about any major sports events that happened. For instance, say Tom Brady unretires, we'll talk about it. Jaden, how you doing today?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm fired up to get this podcast going. Let's start off with the first thing I wanted to bring up, the Buffalo Sabres. The trade deadline is nearly approaching, right? It is going to be Friday at 3 p.m. Man, the Sabres have a lot of work to do if they want to get themselves in a respected spot by the end of the season, coming off a brutal loss against the San Jose Sharks. Let's start off by talking about some breaking news that happened earlier today, though. Jordan Greenway signs an extension, 2 years, $4 million. Opinions on that?
Yeah, trade market right now is pretty crazy in the NHL. That Tampa Bay trade just went down with Seattle. They got two first round picks. Seattle did for Bjorkstrand, I think, and Yanni Gord. So market's definitely hot right now for sellers, but the Sabres, they don't need first round picks right now. They don't need prospects. So 2 years, 8 million, caps going up. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
do
it's
you
not
think
like the
about it?
Sabres are going to spend to the cap floor anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree. I think Jordan Greenway is one of those players who is really going to exceed in the playoffs, right? He's a bigger frame guy. He can handle the puck. He's physical when he wants to be. The issue is the injuries. Are you concerned about that at all?
Yeah, he hasn't always been healthy the last few years. When he's on the ice, he's a big difference maker. Kind of reminds me of Matthias Samuelsson a few years ago. When he was in
Mhm.
the lineup, we were great. When he wasn't, we weren't so great, which is funny nowadays because pretty much the opposite. But yeah, health is the biggest concern with that deal. When he's on the ice, he's a difference maker. So we'll see.
Yeah. So you're saying we shouldn't give Greenway a 7-year deal? yeah,
I
yeah. I mean,
mean,
yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, let's transition here into more of the trade deadline. Some guys who are kind of on the hot stove right now. Some guys that could be moving, departing the Sabres. Let's start with Henry Jokiharju. 3 goals, 6 points on the year. Two of those 3 goals coming very recently. I mean, this guy has been just quite a disappointment for the Sabres. Although Chicago fans were very sad to see him go his rookie year when he was acquired by the Sabres. But man, he has been miserable for the last couple seasons. Last year, I thought he was the worst player on the ice 90% of the time. What do you think the Sabres could get for a guy like Yoki Haru?
A great question. Probably not a whole lot, but ever since the Four Nations tournament, he's been white hot. Some people are calling him Henry Yoki Ovechkin.
Yeah.
Uh, Wayne Gretzky. He's even admitted. He's a little worried about his record here. But if you can get a sixth round pick, a fifth round pick, it's addition by subtraction at this point. I
Yeah, I mean, I
mean,
can't disagree. I
we
can't
already
disagree with
we
that.
already won the trade, so it is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and again, you want to get. I know that Kevin Adams has said, I don't want prospects. I don't want, picks, whatever. Does he not understand you get those prospects and picks and move them to get NHL ready players, right? Let's not just lose out on guys that we have here that are on expiring deals and stuff like that. At least get something for them and then use those picks. And that's why we need an experienced GM. And Kevin Adams is probably not the answer unless he really shocks us in the offseason, if he even makes it that far. Let's transition it into a guy who I know I don't want to trade him. I know you probably don't want to trade him, but he's been brought up a little bit. Alex Tuch. Tuch this year, 23 goals, 24 assists, has been solid, but he is getting older. Keep that in mind. He is a guy who, quote unquote, wants to be here, right? That's all we hear about from the Sabres nowadays. We want guys who want to be here, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't want to be here. He was a Sabres fan growing up, but he's getting close to falling off that cliff, and he isn't the same player that he was when we first got him. Opinions on Tuch being moved?
I can't get behind it.
Yeah.
That's the type of player that they should be trying to trade for right now. And to have one of them on your roster and trade him away, I think that would be a bad idea. And then get rid of him. And who's replacing him? You're gonna replace him with a prospect in the lineup. You're taking steps backwards here. So I don't like
Yeah,
it.
Isak Rose and just slides right into that spot perfect, right?
Yep.
yeah. Let's move on to Bo Byram. Byram this year, 18 assists or let's see here, where are the stats on Byram? Maybe I didn't write him down here, but Byram, not a great year offensively. He's a very streaky player, right? I know when he scores one, he scores two usually, and other than that, he's pretty silent. His defense, it looked pretty solid up until 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden, he's been a mess out there on the ice. Do you think the Sabres should get rid of him while they can?
He's a tough case. I mean, when he's with Darlene, he's great. But I mean, if anybody's with Darlene, they're pretty much great unless you're like, Victor Anapin, but that's a bit of a pull. Um,
Yeah, Victor
um,
Anapin. If Victor Anapin adjusted to the NHL ice, he would for sure be Eric Carlson 2.0. But
I,
unfortunately, it just didn't work out.
yeah, but I mean, with Byram, I think you have a lot of money tied up in your defense right now. So if I could move him for, say, an Elias Pettersson, I mean, I'd do it because if you can't play away from Dahlin on this team, then you're not really much of a help. So
Yeah, and Bowen Byram has not played good with Darlene, right? A lot of people are saying he's holding Darlene up. You look at the advanced analytics, and they're not good for Bo Byram. So, man, if you, I know getting him was probably a thought to get Power a partner, but they really haven't meshed well, and they haven't really got a chance either because your defensive core is so weak, and you have so much money invested against Samuelson with this big long-term deal that's going to kill them. Unless they could trade him, you think anyone would take Samuelson?
I mean, NHL GMs do love them, some defensemen, no matter who they are. I mean, you look a few years ago, Kevin Adams actually got, a first round pick and some excess for Rasmus Ristolainen. So, I mean, if you could trade him, I think you could trade Samuelson.
Again, this is a different Kevin Adams than then, though. Kevin Adams is far from respected, according to sources in the NHL GM bubble. Kevin Adams is also mocked within the GM bubble, according to some sources. So, good luck making any trades if your name is Kevin Adams, because I think people realize that you are not a very good GM, but maybe he will prove us wrong. Let's wrap up some potential departures. Let's just rapid fire these. Let's talk about Cousins first, because Dylan Cousins uh, how do we feel about Dylan Cousins, right? Because this is a guy who you either love him or you hate him, and you're not going to change your mind. I've seen people online say, just wait for him to, grow into his body. He's got the shot, he's got the physicality. But the last 2 seasons, Dylan Cousins has been almost invisible or a net negative on this team. And it's unfortunate because I was someone who was so excited for Dylan Cousins, of course, when he was in whatever, the WHL or whatever up there. I mean, he was tearing it up. And then he comes to the NHL and just kind of is a rough player. I mean, do you think Dylan Cousins is someone we should hold our faith in, invest in, or should we just get rid of him while we can?
I'd get rid of him while you still can. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's in the same boat as Jack Quinn for me. I mean, should have been like a cornerstone player for you, but I mean, he's just a train wreck on the ice. I mean, another one of those guys on the Sabres who's just falling down on the ice all the time, can't skate, can't defend. Like, it's just, I'd get rid of him while he still has any value.
Yeah, you bring up falling down on the ice. How about Jack Quinn? You mentioned him earlier too. Jack Quinn, 10 goals, 14 assists this year. That's anything but good from a player who's supposed to be a goal scorer and only a goal scorer. Again, he had great skates, good speed, good shot. Then he had those back-to-back injuries, and Jack Quinn has just been a terrible player on the ice. Again, another net negative for the Sabres this year. I'd say trade him, but I don't know if anyone wants him. It's that bad for a guy like Jack Quinn. And to be, so far away from that point where we were worried if we would have enough money to sign Paterka and Quinn long term. Now, I mean, you could give Jack Quinn a couple McDoubles, and I think he would take that offer to be on this team next year. That's how bad it is. Do you think anyone wants Jack Quinn? I mean, again, he's still young. I guess he still has a high ceiling, but
I mean, he's still young, he hasn't gotten a big contract yet. I mean, people might think there's still something there. I feel like I've heard that, they've gotten some calls about him. So I think if Adams was willing to make the move, I think he probably could, but I don't think you're going to get anything meaningful back besides picks or like a low tier prospect. So at this point, I kind of doubt that Adams is going to do that, but I think you could.
yeah. Last player I want to talk about here before we move to the next segment, which will be maybe some teams we could trade with. Let's talk about Owen Power. 6 goals, 25 assists this year. Owen Power, again, former number 1 overall pick. And I know in Sabres land here, we always talk about man, if we just got that other number one, Connor McDavid, things could be looking a little bit different. But of course, we always win the lottery when it's not the big fish. And Owen Power is one of those guys who was certainly a disappointment when we found out we had the number one overall pick. But I got to say, he's been improving, right? A little bit game by game. You could see him improve in front of the net. He still looks like a baby deer trying to skate in most defensive sequences, but his offense is there. What he's lacking is confidence, and it's hard to gain confidence on a team that just straight up loses games and loses seasons and has a loser mentality. Do you think Owen Power will be fine in the long run, or do you think he's shot? I mean, it's tough for a young player going into the system. How many times have we seen players just fumble and they have to get out of Buffalo to really find themselves?
I'm not really concerned about Owen Power. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion online with Sabres fans, but his underlying offensive stats are great. He drives play. He's not ever going to be, Zdeno Chara, but I mean, his offense, he drives the offense. He can move the puck around. He can run a power play if you really need him to. I mean, scores goals every once in a while if you're playing the Leafs.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
about
mean,
it.
I mean, I feel like we should have learned from Dahlin. I mean, we all thought that Dahlin was just kind of meh for the first few years that we had him, and I mean, now look at him. So I think Power could end up on a similar trajectory.
Yeah, he reminds me so much of Dahlin, right? The amount of times I've screamed at Dahlin over the TV in his first couple of years, right? Because he just wasn't physical. He was very indecisive, and we see that from Power too. You see that on the power play with Power. The puck hits his stick, and all of a sudden it's freeze, for a couple of seconds, and then he makes up his mind. Good power plays move the puck, and let's get into the Sabres power play, right? There's a podcast. We can talk about anything. This is the worst power play unit I have ever seen, and we've had some terrible, terrible power play units. Why can they not fix this power play? I mean, this is going on 3 years that this unit continues to do the same thing. They lose the faceoff, it gets cleared. They do 2 drop passes. They don't know how to skate it. You have 5 players on the ice against 4. How do you not get the puck situated in the offensive zone within the first minute? By the time they get it situated, the second unit's out there and they get one weak shot from somebody who shouldn't even be shooting the puck, right? Because they're snipers, and Tage Thompson and Peterka can't handle the puck on the power play. I don't understand why. So it's some guy in the bumper spot. Maybe Cousins gets a whimper on, or Power, or one of the third unit guys that comes on with like 10 seconds to go, and they try to redo the lines. This power play is killing this team, and this is going on the 3rd year where it's game after game after game. You score 1 power play goal, you win the game, but they just don't do it. It's really unfortunate. And again, I know a lot of people harped on Matt Ellis, his power play unit last year, but all of a sudden somebody else is running the power play and nothing's changed, right? It's the players on the ice. They don't know what they're doing. How? I mean, again, you could send out the log line, Johan Larson, Kyle Okposo. You could send those guys out there, right? And they would at least hold on to the puck in the offensive zone. Why can our star players not operate a power play?
Where do I even start on this one?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I think it comes down to a few things. I mean, I've always said, I mean, every year for the last few years, we've been bottom of the league in face-off percentage. So, I mean, you start there, you lose the face-off, the puck gets cleared.
Every time.
So you're already 30 seconds down right there because you don't have the puck and you got to re-enter the zone and they stack the line on you. And then after, 4 or 5 drop passes, maybe somebody finally gets lucky, gets it into the zone. You got like 45 seconds left.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into the zone and you're either like just passing it around, not shooting, or you're forcing it to Tage for a one-timer. And then you maybe get 1 shot and then the puck's cleared and then the power play's over. So,
Yep.
I mean, and then you also look at the coaching. I mean, Matt Ellis, I don't really know what his qualification was to be coaching that unit. And then this year,
Well, he was quite the NHL superstar himself, right? I mean, star offensive defenseman, put up 50 goals one year. I mean, I don't understand it, why you would give him the power play rights, but it comes down to the fact that you need more than one good player on the ice on a power play, right? Teams know you're forcing it to Tage, and it's been 2 years of forcing it to Tage. Eventually, teams are just going to shift that way. You have to get someone to co-align with Tage Thompson on that first unit on the other side that has a good shot. Then you bring out the second unit, It's just Paterka. They're trying to get Paterka his shot on the other side of the wing. It doesn't work. And this team just continues to rapid fire the same few plays over and over and over. And they overpass and they don't put the puck in front of the net. They don't have anyone with size in front of the net to jam at it. So it's a weak shot from the point and they get cleared out. It's just a soft team. It's a weak team. That leads me into my next segment, Lindy Ruff. This team wasn't supposed to be soft. I mean, you go out and you get this guy, Lindy Ruff, to come back. And again, it's nostalgia. Whoop-de-doo. Their best acquisition of the offseason was a coach. Again, I can sound off on that for hours. But you bring in Lindy Ruff, and this team was supposed to be all of a sudden a physical team under him. I'd say it's softer than last year. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't say that, but I don't think it's significantly better than it was last year. I think also the personnel's a little bit more geared towards that, which has helped. But I mean, we've seen it this year. Like Lindy, he started the year not really pushing these guys that much. And
Mm-hmm.
then there was one time like a month ago, I think it might have been during the big losing streak, when he had them like practice, like maybe on a back to back or something like that, really push them, get them skating, get their feet moving. And they came out and played great that night. And then, like, ever since, it's just been like the same thing. They
Yeah.
just, they're not really putting in the extra work. They're not getting their feet moving early in the game. And, the results are showing it.
Yeah, and as someone who was very excited with Lindy Ruff being hired as the coach, mainly for nostalgia, I am disgusted with the results on the ice. I mean, I cannot believe how soft Lindy Ruff has become. The amount of practices, morning skates that have been canceled this year is an absolute joke, especially for a team not even sniffing the playoffs. I mean, this group of guys has been treated like they're first in the league and they deserve every day off, and it's an absolute joke. Again, keep in mind they started off the season overseas, so I get that, but we see what they're trying to do, and that's the opposite of Lindy Ruff, right? The conditioning is not there with these guys. Sure, they get morning skates off, practices off. They're a really good first period team, right? They have top 5 in the league in first period goal differential. It's the second and third periods where they don't know how to close out games, and that comes with experience too. And I think they're just so unconfident, and they're just such a group of losers right now that it gets to the third period, and we saw that Colorado infamous game this year. I mean, you could be up by 4 goals, and this team does not know how to close out a game. It's very unfortunate. Let's switch up the goaltending. I know Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's had a very up and down season. Do you think he's the future of this team? Do you think it's Levi? Do you think? I mean, you can't go into next year with a James Reimer equivalent in UPL. It just does not work because every third game UPL is just terrible and it hasn't worked. You got to split time. We figured that out. What's the solution?
I think UPL is fine. I mean, obviously they just signed into that big 5-year contract, so I mean he's not going anywhere anytime soon. I'd like to see him be a little more consistent, like you mentioned. Every 2 or 3 games he puts up a real stinker.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think that also comes back to the James Reimer point as well, where you don't really have a backup. So I mean, UPL's playing like 55, 60 out of your 82 games, like something insane that you don't really even see that much anymore. So he's getting a little overworked, I'd say. I think as far as Levi goes, he looks great in the AHL. I mean, maybe next year he's your 1B with UPL, and then you just let Reimer go. Don't bring anybody else in.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really like every time Levi comes up, he doesn't look confident. The guys in front of him are just they don't help him. Like if I could move him for, a big forward or something like that, like I'd probably do it.
You have an issue with goaltending, right? And the solution is not 3 goaltenders. We tried that. It doesn't work. And you're right. Levi has looked really bad in the NHL. So moving him, putting your faith in UPL and getting an established backup goalie, I think that might be the solution for next year. I think you're onto something there because, man, I mean, you just can't go into next year saying, oh, Levi looks bad in the NHL again. Here we go. Let's sign freaking Carter Hutton, who's 50 years old off waivers, and
Well,
put
Craig
him in
Anderson
every
up
5th
too.
game. Yeah, Craig Anderson. I mean, honestly, Craig Anderson starting every game would probably be better than what UPL and Reimer have done this year. And it's not stats wise so much; it's timely goals, it's bad goals. I mean, you look at Reimer, that other game against the Canadians, that overtime goal, that is just pathetic. UPL lets in at least 1 goal a game that you're just like, you have to have that. In the wise words, well, some may say wise words of Mike Harrington, make a save. It's just been a really bad year goaltending wise. Let's talk about some players that maybe the Sabres could get at the trade deadline. Maybe the Sabres say, you know what, we're not selling anything. We're gonna buy. We don't want your picks. We don't want your prospects, like they said. Is there anyone on any team in specific here that you would really love the Sabres to go get at the deadline? Not even in the offseason. We're talking right here, right now, this week.
I mean, to be totally honest, I mean, right now, I don't really want Kevin Adams making any big moves because
Yeah.
I feel like he should be gone after this
Mm-hmm.
season. But I mean, I'd still like to get Pettersson from Vancouver. I've heard Brock Besser's
Brock
maybe out
Besser.
there. Mikko Rantanen's probably not an option, but if
I don't think
he,
so.
I did hear from a source that Mikko Rantanen would love to sign a long-term contract here in Buffalo.
The source may have been me.
Sources,
Yeah.
my delusional brain.
Yeah.
I mean, besides that, I don't. I mean, you're still looking for a veteran defenseman to put with power. I mean, you missed out on Pettersson from the other Pettersson from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Could
you're
have doubled down.
still you're still looking around on that front. So I don't really know exactly who would be out there, but I mean, there's always guys like Dante Fabro out there, guys like that. But besides that, I don't really see Adams doing anything too crazy.
Yeah, I've seen some Brock Besser chatter. I've also seen Matthew Nyes from Toronto. I've heard him kind of mentioned a little bit. Another player, Ryan O'Reilly. We've heard him for a couple of years now, maybe a potential return. I don't think that would happen, but you never know. Last thing I want to talk about with the Sabres before we move on to some other sports is the future of Kevin Adams and Lindy Ruff. And you kind of hinted on it. Let's start with Kevin Adams. Got to be gone after the season, right? The fact he's still the GM is quite remarkable. And the only way you can keep Kevin Adams is if before he gets fired in the offseason, he goes out and gets Pettersson and Mitch Marner. And he's like, all right, like this the messing around's done. Again, there's still the rumors of an internal cap. And, I know we could talk about this is the 8th season in a row we've been under the cap and we just refuse to take anything on for free assets. But if there's not an internal cap, Kevin Adams may be the worst GM of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the internal cap is pretty much confirmed at this point. I mean, you got 6 million in cap space right now, and you got other trades going on where teams are just getting mid-round picks just to take on 25% of the salary, and the Sabres are nowhere to be found on that. But would I like to see Kevin Adams gone? Yes. Do I think he'll be gone? No, because Terry loves that Kevin Adams will just take the blame for him, take the fall. He'll come out there say, there's no internal cap. We got full support from ownership. So, and I mean, even if you get rid of Kevin Adams, I mean, what's really going to come of that? I mean,
Yeah.
Terry's just going to hire another rink manager for the Harbor Center, and it'll be Kevin Adams 2.0.
I mean, you seem pretty mad with Terry Pagula right now. I mean, have you not seen that new scoreboard? I mean, that's
I
pretty
mean,
sweet.
it's pretty nice, but I mean, Jeff Skinner did did bite the bullet for that one.
Yeah.
And that new
Yeah. In
roof.
all seriousness, Terry Pagula, please, if you're listening to this, invest a little more in the hockey team here. I mean, this is an absolute joke. I mean, 14 years we're going on, no playoffs. Your general manager said the time is now before this year. The time cannot be any further from now. And that's where we'll wrap up the Sabres section. Let's switch gears to a Buffalo team that is a little bit more successful. I'm not talking about the Bandits. Let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. First, let's recap Khalil Shakir returning. Quick thoughts on that. I mean, I'm pretty excited about it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. That's a great contract for him. I mean, I think he was projected about 77 million, 78 million. So to get him for 60 million, a little bit more than that, I mean, that's just an absolute steal by Bean. Great job drafting him, developing him, getting him back on a team-friendly contract. I mean, very happy with that one.
Yeah, and it's great that he can definitely resemble one of those picks that Brandon Bean had that actually got going, right? Because Brandon Bean, if it's not for Josh Allen, you can say he's made some questionable picks in the draft. We look at Kaiir Elam and some other notable names. But yeah, Khalil Shakir, definitely a great addition to this Bills team. And it looks like he's going to be here for potentially his whole career. We'll see how long after that contract he sticks around. But one of those guys who's just a great nifty receiver, right? You can put him in the slot, you can put him out wide. He's slippery downfield. He has great downfield field speed. He doesn't have the highest of speed, route running, but once he has the ball in his hands, he can get yards, and that's something that the Bills have lacked in years prior. So having Shakir develop, and it looks like he's only going to get better from here, is good. Let's switch over to talk about James Cook now. James Cook, he wants to let every single person on this planet know that he is worth $15 million. And let me tell you, I'm one of those people who would rather give him around $5 million, if we're being honest. Running backs are a dime a dozen. You should not pay running backs. Saquon Barkley, of course, had to happen. So now you get some people, a lot of former running backs saying, see, there it is. I told you, the running back position, it's back. No, it's not at all. Take that money, invest in the offensive line. We saw Ray Davis. We saw Ty Johnson, right? I mean, these guys looked fabulous under this current offensive line when they were given reps. James Cook's good. Don't get me wrong. Is he Saquon Barkley good? Absolutely not. And if he sniffs $15 million, I'm seriously questioning Bean's decision-making.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just saw on Twitter, I believe that Ty Johnson had the highest yards per touch this season for running backs or something along those lines. So, I mean, James Cook at this point might be looking for more than 15 million the way that he was reacting to the Saquon contract the other day. Yeah, I'm definitely not on that train, but I think the running back market is kind of trending back upwards because I also just saw Najee Harris is projected to get about 10 million. So, and I mean,
the Saquon effect.
Yeah, and I mean, Najee Harris isn't really coming off of his best season, so I mean, I would prepare for the reality of James Cook maybe being gone after his contract's up, unless his expectations come down and Bean can work something out.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's probably coming a lot from his brother Dalvin Cook as well, somebody who always petitioned for more money. But for a guy that says absolutely nothing on the field and has no media, personality at all, he's sure been quite vocal on social media this week, and it's truly one of those things where I'm at the point now where, all right, we're just gonna, we're just gonna give you the old, year after year after year, just sign you to the franchise tag, and you're gonna like it because it really is just something where we saw it with Diggs, just constant yapping on social media. And now all of a sudden, here we go again, right? A lot of deja vu for Bills fans. Hopefully the Bills and James Cook can figure something out before it gets to a point of no return. Anything else you want to talk about with the Bills before we move on?
I mean, we got free agency starting up Monday, video dropping shortly here on some free agency targets. I mean, if we want to dive into anything there, I mean, we could talk about DK Metcalf trade request.
Yeah, let's talk about DK Metcalf, right? DK Metcalf coming off a very, very, very solid season. I'll pull the stats up real quick. I had them open for a video I did that will be coming out very soon. But yeah, it was a not really a surprise that DK Metcalf requested a trade. I know there's been some chatter, and especially with the Bills, and now all of a sudden that broke, all these Bills people online are saying, "Yep, there it is. There's our guy." Right? I mean, it could happen, right? DK Metcalf 992 yards and only 5 touchdowns last year, though. So he had the yardage, not really the touchdowns. I mentioned in that video too, Mac Hollins had 5 touchdowns, so I wouldn't necessarily put them on the same pedestal, but stats wise, there you go. DK Metcalf having 3 times more yards, though. DK Metcalf being one of those players who has it all. He has the speed, he has the size, he can make insane catches, he has the knowledge. I know a lot of people who are against this are saying his personality kind of deters them from getting him. Opinions on DK Metcalf?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a much better way to describe him, just a freak of nature. But I mean, I'd say my biggest concern with him, not even really is the character. I'd say maybe more the contract. I mean, we just got rid of Diggs, freed up all that money. Well, not yet because it's dead money right now, but
soon,
eventually it will be free money. But I think my biggest concern with that would be obviously, like I said, the money. And if you're going to go get, a Myles Garrett or whatever other edge rusher, Khalil Mack, if you want to do something like that, I think that would be a much better use of your money after, Allen just won MVP with the receiving core that he had. So a guy like DK Metcalf, it'd be nice to have him, but you don't need him.
Yeah, and your secondary is so weak too. You should probably invest more money in that defense. A guy like Hassan Reddick could fill in for a year, maybe say, prove it deal for him. You save money. Maybe you don't get a Myles Garrett, and then you do get a DK Metcalf, and you even it out that way. Again, I do trust Bean. Bean's made a lot of good decisions. So whatever he does, I will be fully on board with as we head into next season. But again, you have MVP at quarterback. I don't think we should really be worried as long as he's here in Buffalo. We always have a chance. And keep in mind, there's always moves at the trade deadline. The Bills, on another note, are one of those teams where, we talked about Lindy Ruff as a head coach. The Bills have quite the head coach themselves in Sean McDermott. And he has been, I don't really want to say anything bad because he has been a solid coach, right? I mean, we can't say he's been a terrible coach. He's gotten us to the playoffs. He broke the drought, blah, 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 blah. He can't get us to the big game, though. And how many times have we seen him get out-coached against better coaches, right? Andy Reid in specific. How long can you continue with a guy like Sean McDermott? Let's say, hypothetically, the Bills go out in the divisional round this upcoming season. Do you keep Sean McDermott? I know it's a crazy question because we don't know the details of the season, just in general.
I mean, me personally, I would think about moving on if there was a really good candidate out there, like a Ben Johnson, who's obviously not an option anymore. But
Yeah.
I mean, he could be because it's Chicago, and who knows what will happen with them. But
0-17?
I mean, possible. I think so long as McDermott gets this team to the playoffs, he's not even really sniffing the hot seat. But if you miss the playoffs, and then I don't even think he'd be gone after that. But if you miss the playoffs, maybe say like 2, 3 years in a row and the team just looked really bad, like he could then maybe be out. But I don't even really think it's close to happening at this point. So
yeah, I mean, Sean McDermott's a likable guy, but you cannot have a defensive head coach on a team with Josh Allen. It just cannot happen, right? Especially a defensive head coach that his defense hasn't been good in the last 5 seasons. It can't happen. And again, I've always said with Josh Allen, you can luck into a Super Bowl, but man, if we had an offensive head coach, a good offensive head coach, we could have had a couple by now. Let's switch out of the Bills. Let's wrap it up talking about some other sports going on. Let's talk about college hoops for a little bit. March Madness starting pretty soon. I know me and you are very, very excited for the start of March Madness, but right now we got conference tournaments coming up. Let's start with some local teams. UB already eliminated from the MAC tournament. They're not going to make it. Canisius having one of the worst seasons they've ever had. If you're on the Canisius basketball team or you go to Canisius, I'm sorry. And yeah, we move outside to our, big time local schools. I guess you could say St. Bonaventure having a decent year. We'll see what they do if they make that tournament there. And then Syracuse basketball. Syracuse still alive in the ACC contention. I know they're trying to win games. They just lost to SMU the other night.
yeah, I believe Syracuse is still alive, but I mean, they're not having a very good year.
No.
They're just kind of waiting for next year. They got a big recruiting class coming in, Carmelo Anthony's son, so we'll see where they go.
Yeah, so next episode we'll talk about some results of the conference tournaments and stuff. Not a whole lot going on right now, though. We're kind of wrapping up the regular season, and some of the smaller tournaments are getting going. Let's switch to our 2 out of Buffalo teams that we like to talk about. Let's start with the Knicks, right? Because they're in the regular season. Knicks coming off a loss to the Golden State Warriors. They play the Lakers. I don't know when we're going to release this, so it might have already happened. That's their next game, I believe, against the Lakers. The Knicks, again, they've looked solid this year. I think they have a ways to go to be a championship contending team, but definitely going to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, definitely still working out the chemistry. Karl Anthony Towns is out for a little bit now, so not really going to help too much on that front. But they've been on and off. You're just kind of going to be hoping that in the playoffs they just peak right around that time. They get it going and just kind of throw their best punch at whoever they play and really get it going.
Yeah, and we will finish this podcast off with the Mets from 0-5 to OMG to oh no, he is gone. Jose Iglesias signs a deal with the Padres, a minor league deal. I still am firmly in the belief that Jose Iglesias will be back on this Mets roster by the end of the year. I think he does get put on waivers at one point, and the Mets don't have a lot of infield depth. I know they got some young guys who are fighting for it, but they have a lot of guys on this team that are getting older, and especially guys like Starling Marte. I don't know if he makes it through the whole year. We'll have to see how Jeff McNeil plays this year. and there's always a chance for an injury. So I think Iglesias will be one of the first guys, if he is available, that the Mets would want to go out and snag to fill a little bit of a void in the season. Again, baseball season is 162 games long. I find it hard to fathom that they wouldn't want him at some point in the year. Let's just do a little bit of a prediction for the Mets because we're still in spring training. These games do not matter at all, right? I mean, you could talk about Max Kranick, looks like a good pitcher, but he can get lit up, in the regular season. Who knows? Let's do a little bit of a prediction. Where do you see the Mets finishing in the NL East? And do you think they win a World Series within the next 3 years?
Start with where they finished this year. I think the NL East, it's going to be tough again. You got the Marlins at the bottom, not spending money, whatever they're doing. You got the Nationals. They got some exciting young players. They're coming up here in a couple of years. They'll be back in it again. And then you got the three at the top. You got the Mets, you got the Braves, you got the Phillies. I think the Braves with Acuna out and Strider out for a little bit of the beginning of the season. I think I'll put them in third, and then I will put the Mets finishing second and the Phillies winning the division. But I think the Phillies, Braves, and Mets will all make it like last year. As far as the World Series goes in the next 3 years, I'll say I think I'll have to say yeah.
Yeah, gotta do it. Might be a little biased, but I mean they do have the team to do it, right? And last year they didn't have Soto, and they almost
if not now when.
Yeah, I agree. I think I got to completely agree. Right, second in the NL East. I don't think they win the division just because the pitching is rough. I think they'll add on at the trade deadline and really make themselves a World Series team. But until then, I think the pitching room is going to be rough. That lineup though should be much better than last year. Let's finish the podcast. We'll do this every single time. Best thing you saw today. Today, I mean, I got to say, I was on campus today and I saw somebody, I'm not going to mention their weight, but they were pretty big, slip in the snow. So that's going to be the best thing I saw today. Really made my day. No injuries, all fun and games, but somebody took a tumble on the ice and it's not even cold out.
I mean, I don't even know if I can match that. I don't
I
even
got to come up with something.
Now.
We'll wrap with that one. So thank you guys for watching episode one of Buffalo Talk Center. Again, we will be doing these not necessarily every week, but sometimes we'll have 2-3 a week. Sometimes we'll have one a month. It depends what's going on, right? Obviously, if there's nothing going on, we're not going to come on here and talk about people falling in the snow for an hour and a half. So thank you guys for watching this video. That was Jaden. I am Cal, and peace out.